Hi, Mitchell Levy, global credibility expert. And one of the fun times of my day these days is talking to super cool humans about their values. And it is so interesting to see inside the mind or inside the persona or through the walls of people we're talking with. And today's guest, Dr. Justin James Kennedy, JJ Kennedy, is no exception. Sectons. JJ, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, Mitchell. It's good to see your happy, smiley face again.
Well, thank you. I like to ask this first question. I'll just throw it over the fence to you. And so, who are you?
Right. Well, I am a lover and a fighter, a hater and a chaser. I'm hopefully not so bad at telling jokes. So, Mitchell,
No, that's the hater thing. No, you're not that. You're not that guy because I wouldn't have invited you on. So,
I'm not a lover or a fighter, a hater or a chaser. Anyway, I'm sure there's an old John Lennon song there. Anyway,
there,
let
there,
me come
there
back
is
to being
something there.
serious.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think um, I I am a person who is curious by nature. I think that's what I'd like to be seen as.
Hmm.
Am I'm obviously not very good at jokes,
Yeah.
but I think I'm always quite curious, but at the same quite challenging. I'm not going to let things roll over, but I'm interested to know what makes them roll. So I am I'm interested, I'm curious, I'm challenging, I'm clearly quite playful as well. Um, and yeah, I don't know. I think that's about it. Is that enough? How have I done?
Oh, it's not a bad. It's not a bad. So I love curiosity. It's always a. It's definitely one of those words that allows
Mm,
someone to be more credible. Tell me a little bit more about you, either uh, not necessarily the work stuff, but personal. What's a little bit more about
mm.
how do you show up in the world?
Oh, it's such a loaded question. Maybe not a loaded question. Maybe it's a loaded answer, because this answer that I'm about to give you has been so engineered. So
Oh,
the
then don't do the engineered answer. Let's do
no,
something
but
else.
I mean, I'm telling you it's engineered so that it doesn't come over trite or in or lacking integrity. Um, the journey to this point has been pretty pretty stressful, to say the least. I Today I'm a professor of behavioral neuroscience, Mitchell, and I got into neuroscience after being in a coma. And the journey through recovering from the coma and learning about my brain and having that curiosity, as we spoke about earlier, um, has really has really defined who I am so much. That event was really so critical in developing who I am. So I've written a book on my journey, and I've written some content, some academic articles on what you can do to reboot the brain and build in that neuroplasticity, as it's well known now. Um, so a lot of my work has been looking at describing myself. So my thinking, Mitchell, is to best understand and describe myself as an experimenter on myself by looking at
Hmm.
how I have really looked at my own brain, saying, "Oh God, how's this thing not working? What can I do to make it a bit better?" And then using those tools to see how I can help others as well. So um, at the end of the day, I suppose I'm really interested to what is there's a great phrase, "Doctor, heal thyself." I don't know who said that, but it was obviously someone very important because I can remember it. And it's been my job to look at how I can help others, because by helping others, you tend to help yourself along the way. So
Hmm.
it's been a real blessing to have that opportunity to be that helper, because it's such a beautiful space to be of service, isn't it?
Oh, always. It's being of service to others is one of the core tenets of being credible. But
Right,
what does
right.
helping others mean to you?
There's so many, such a loaded question, isn't it?
Oh, they all are by definition. They should be open-ended, opportunity to take it in whatever direction you want. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I got lost. What is the question?
Oh, no worries. Yeah. It's what what does being helpful to others mean to you?
I used to think it was getting evidence of benefit. I still obviously do believe that to some regard, getting getting that feedback, oxytocin release that I'm a good person, I'm helpful. But what has really started to make sense for me lately is to see how those people have impact on their environments as an indirect consequence. So when you see people implementing the benefits in their own environment, that really has resonance for me. If that's not too verbose answer, Michelle.
All right, so helping others and just trying to track this is seeing the benefits that they have from your interaction. Is that what you said?
It's seeing what's happened as a consequence. So a good example would be you're helping a football coach learn how to be a coach. Okay, but then what you notice is how his coaching improves the team that he's working with. So it's like that. That's that second tier down. Are
Mm,
you following me?
yep. So it's your definition then becomes the experiential feeling you have by seeing what you do manifest.
Pretty much. It's pretty much like the indirect consequence of something. It's
Hmm.
giving. It's like getting me out the way, basically. It's not about the Joe Rogan experience. It's about the experience that those people are having, and just getting myself off the stage, getting the benefits to be in that person's environment. That's what I really resonate with me, Mitchell.
Hmm. And tell me what you do. How do you support others?
So what I do, like professionally.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a couple of things I do. I'm a professor of behavioral neuroscience with a couple of universities. Um, I also have a coaching practice where I focus in the area of organizational well-being neuroscience. I've written a textbook on that area. I also have a coaching practice that focuses on helping Ph.D. candidates get into the right Ph.D. program. So that's working very, very well. I founded an institute of organizational neuroscience, and there is about 24 PhD candidates who are fellows in that environment, all researching, challenging, experimenting with how to apply neuroscience into areas of leadership and psychological safety and women in business, etc., etc. And I have a deep, deep interest in helping others find out what they want to do. So that's kind of like the coach in me, and
Mm.
helping people do that self-actualizing stuff. I really get a kick on that, helping people go through that journey, Mitchell.
Were you that person before the coma?
I think I think yes. I think that the simple answer is yes. What happened after the coma is that I started to see my mind through the lens of my brain. So I started to, reconsider that, sure, my mind is a consequence of my brain. This 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 fatty blob has an activity, and that is the mind. And if this fatty blob is damaged, it influences the mental activity. So I was studying to be a psychologist before the coma. So that clearly influenced my intentions in the first place, Mitchell.
So I'm trying to figure out. So in a mile. So by the just since you threw it out there and I asked, tell me about how did that coma thing happen? How long was it?
So what happened is I ended up with a subdural hemorrhage, which is a fancy way of saying my brain was bleeding. All the
Mm.
veins around the brain were all smashed up after being in a road accident. So this drunk driver came out of nowhere and knocked me off a motorbike. I had just bought this bike. I've ridden it like 3 times.
Mm.
I'd bought a. I've been riding the bike around for the 2 days before without a motorcycle helmet. I bought one and then got knocked off the bike. So there was a message that you got to stay James Dean and never wear a helmet. But maybe that's not a good message to send out. But the coma resulted in me, having the right hand side of my body paralyzed. I couldn't speak. I couldn't really walk. And I couldn't really control my emotions. That was the worst part. I was depressed 1 second. I was angry the next. I was crying the next. I mean, it was all over the place. And the process to notice what was happening emotionally was very, very important for my personal and I suppose my professional development, Mitchell. It really was an important part of that journey for me.
That's interesting. So were you not as emotional before the accident?
I definitely wasn't as emotionally intelligent because after the coma, I was like emotionally unintelligent, as you can imagine. So when you get down to ground zero, you can only go up. So there's a good question around what is a feeling and what is an emotion. And I often ask this, and you don't have to answer the question, but let me just throw it out to you anyway, because I have an answer, and it doesn't mean your answer is right or wrong. So my question is, Michelle, what is the difference between an emotion and a feeling, in your opinion? Should I answer it, or should I make you play with me?
Oh, it's up to you. If you want to answer it, please do.
I want to hear your thinking. I mean, you can't be wrong. It's your opinion. I mean,
of course.
you can't be wrong. So tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what's your definition of these 2 words.
Oh, that's fascinating. Okay. I've never looked at the dictionary. So normally what would happen before I'd answer. So this is my head talking, not my heart.
Right.
My head would say, I'd look at the definition in by the way, I'm at the tail end of COVID, so my brain's not always working.
Oh, shame.
I would look at the definition in the dictionary of both, then sort of pull them together. It seems to me that emotion feels deeper, and emotion is, like bigger emotions, like love, like support, like help, like fear, panic. I mean, there's emotions seem deeper. And Dean, I'll read Dean's. Dean, thank you so much. I'll read yours in a second. And for feelings, there's a part of me that lets my intuition tell me my feelings. Like particularly when I'm with a human, when I'm with somebody else, I'm feeling kind of where they're at. Are we in sync? Are we feeling comfortable? Are we moving in the direction that's something that they feel is in a positive way, or are they giving me an answer and it's not the real answer, and I just feel like it's when I'll share one last thing. The one thing that happens when I work with somebody and we help them get alignment, I help some people get alignment, is it's not an emotion, it's a feeling. I feel the hair on my arm
Mm.
stand up. I mean, it's just so powerful. Let me see what Dean says, and then I'll answer. He says an emotion is a physical and mental response to a stimulus, and it can be positive or negative. A feeling, on the other hand, is a conscious experience of an emotion. Dude, I can't tell you if that's right or not, Dean, but that's so powerful, and my
Tell
brain couldn't
Dean,
come up with that today.
tell Dean, tell Dean. I think he's the best person in the universe. I've never heard such a good answer because A, I agree with it, and B, I think it's so well written. Mitchell, my opinion is pretty much the same. My belief and my reading has shown me that an emotion is a neurological event. A feeling is a psychological event. So the brain has this emotional trigger, this response. Many theorists would argue there's about 5 to 7 core emotions. I think the core emotion is either safety or fear on that scale. But then there's a rainbow of feelings that happen once we become aware of what's going on in the relationship, in our mind, in our environment, whatever's going on. So that's my opinion. I hope it doesn't contradict what you're thinking.
No, I love it. And by definition, it can't contradict what I'm thinking because it's your opinion, your thought, right? You're not. No one can be. I have one lens, actually, maybe two. When I thought about the bigger lens of what is credibility,
Mm-hmm.
and I ended up coming up with a pledge for the entity I have called Credibility Nation. It really
All
has
right.
two elements in it, and you you mentioned one, and then I gave you a hard time on your lyric on the second one. So the first one is be of service to others, so be a servant leader, and the second is hate doesn't belong, right? And in that lens, so when I look at the world that way, you're a service to others. You're clearly incredibly bright, thoughtful, articulate, curious. You've got all the lots of elements of credibility. Even if I disagreed with what you said, which I don't, it's what you said. It's what you believe. It's your it's the types. It's the way in which it helps me understand a little bit more about you in terms of how you're
Mm,
structured.
that's so well said. Thank you. I love that.
You're welcome. Now, so do you find a pre and post? You like JJ, right? Or do you want Dr. Kennedy? What
Please
I always get that wrong.
call me Bob. I don't really mind. Um, Call me JJ or Justin. It's really you can call me professor when you do your PhD with me. Until then, you have to call me like a friend. Okay.
All right, JJ it is then. So was there a pre and post JJ based on, I mean, I know I asked this question,
Hmm.
but now that we've gone through this definition, let me ask that again.
Hmm.
What's the pre and post JJ? Like who are you now? Or
Mm.
who were you and who are you now?
The the person right now is a much more mindful version of me. Um, the the person right now is much more courageous, um,
Hmm.
because it's a pretty difficult thing to get through and I mean that like emotionally because depression is a bitch. You can't really do much with it. You haven't got the energy to have the energy, so you get depressed because you can't do anything about the depression. It's such a snake eating its own tail. I get called emotional when I think about it. Um, but I I think the most important thing, and most people would resonate with this, is that it's made me much more attentive to being loved and to being loving because without that
Hmm.
human connection, we all feel terribly lonely and philosophically, uh, just isolated, and having that loving support around us, is the whole reason, I think. So yeah, I'm on that kind of philosophical space at the moment, Mitchell. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay.
Oh, it is. It's awesome. I have to tell you, this was meant to be. You were meant to say this because I had a mastermind this morning, and somebody brought up that phrase. You were either um, uh, wanting to be loved, or you're loving.
Cool.
And I was wondering if there's a third or fourth, but I like that bimodal world. So,
So easy to remember, isn't it?
yeah. You know
Yeah.
what? Because we're a little bit on the philosophical side, Stephanie from LinkedIn asked the question, and I thought I'd love to get your feedback because I'm feeling this will bring up a couple values of who you are. She said,
Right.
"What's the difference between shame and humiliation?"
The spelling.
Oh,
I don't know. Let's think about it. Okay. So humiliation is when you are humiliated. Okay. So then you have been shown up to be told that you're not doing great. Shame is when you have been shamed. It is that you have been ostracized. So I don't think I can find a difference now that I say it aloud. Shame, being humiliated. Yeah, I don't think there's a difference. What do you think?
once again, I'm doing this without the
Mm.
Google search on
Yeah, we're both
definition.
going. We're both
Yeah,
going stone
and
cold here.
I agree with you on. So first, humiliation is when it's an outside event or an outside entity that, for me, it feels like somebody else has humiliated you, right? So it's caused by an outside person. And you have a decision, going back to emotions and feelings, you have a decision to decide whether or not that should bother you or not. Because there's some people who may be humiliated that does not that it doesn't bother them because it's not where they live, right? Now,
Mm.
on shame, yeah, I don't have a good definition for shame.
It's
I think
tricky, huh?
shame is what you do. I think shame you do yourself.
I think both shame and humiliation are social experiences.
Oh,
Um, I
interesting.
mean, I don't think it is only interpersonal. There's obviously in some intra because when you feel shamed by what you did, but it has a social component. Humiliation seems to arise, in my opinion, when people are made to feel that they are of lesser status or of less worth. While shame occurs when people are made to feel that they have violated some moral code or some standard.
Oh, I think, by
So,
the way, I was just reading Dean's comment. We need to have Dean come to all these things because he's
okay.
so articulate. He goes, it was basically the difference between internal and external. Let's see. Shame is a internal feeling that arises in response to something we have done or failed to do. I'm going to say, okay, I could buy into that. And on the other hand, humiliation is a public experience. It is a sense of being devalued or exposed that arises from the actions of others. Dean, man, we need to get you to rewrite the dictionary. I mean, you got this stuff down.
He knows his stuff. That's so interesting. Yeah.
He's actually an amazing human. He's one of the 100 coaches, and I got a chance to see him
Mm.
live a couple weeks back when we were in Nashville together. It was fantastic.
Wow. You know, there's this question. I mean, there's a whole like linguistic thing that we can get lost in, but the difference between shame and humiliation then asks the question: what's the difference between guilt and embarrassment, shame and humiliation?
Mm,
There's this whole pot of different things. Um, you know, is embarrassment a light version of humiliation? Is guilt a light version of shame? I don't know. We could go down the rabbit hole, but
I love that rabbit hole, and it got me thinking about something.
well,
One of the bigger issues on effective communication is having a common language. And
exactly.
if we don't sit here and define what those things are, if you there are probably many times where people have been shamed or humiliated or
Hmm.
feel shame because they interpreted somebody's language wrong, or they've been
Mm.
humiliated by somebody else because the language they use is not exactly what they meant, right? And so we didn't have
Mm.
a common language. And that's one of the very important elements of just establishing a community, establishing being able to be credible among each other is not just knowing what people say, but really understanding the meaning behind those words.
You know, there is one of my pilgrimages. One of my pilgrimage, a pilgrimage. I don't know how to say this. A pilgrimage of mine
Uh-huh.
has been about building credibility, Mitchell, um, and that's why I'm so interested in this conversation, specifically within the coaching environment, because anybody can step into the ring and say, I'm a coach. I mean, all you have to do is basically have some basic spelling skills and you're in. And, and after I got out back into the workspace, I started coaching and I struggled with finding my credibility. So I thought, okay, cool, I'll go off and do a PhD. And I thought, well, that would make me credible. And on the surface, it does. You know, you get a title, and you know, some people buy that, and congratulations. But most of them can see through the prefix of your name. And I started thinking, you know, what actually makes you credible by having done a PhD? And I said, well, not really much, other than having the discipline to really investigate a topic that is relevant. So if that topic is relevant to your work, then you know you've shown up as credible. So my belief is that if you're going to be credible, you need to have done the due diligence, and that you need to be able to say that you know you have looked at the stuff quite thoroughly. And in the coaching environment, that has become a very useful way of seeing it. Sure, you can get certified and you can get registered and qualified by many other places, which is obviously a good idea. These things don't happen by mistake. Of course, there's value in it. If there's credibility based on what you believe, based on your due diligence, I think that really gives evidence of efficacy. If that's a doctoral thesis or a book or just you know just some validation of what you're thinking, that's fine. But doing that leads to credibility in whatever the outcome or the product is. Mitchell, I don't know if you agree with my thinking.
I'm going to summarize what your thinking is.
Hmm.
But first, let me say one of the things that came out of. By the way, I was excited to be interviewing with you and having this be our last question as well. So thank you for that. Um, because you help other candidates get their PhD and you have one yourself. The what I found when I was interviewing the 500 thought leaders
Hmm.
is that the PhD in the School of Hard Knocks has more weight than the PhD, like what was written down.
Totally,
Okay,
totally,
thank you for saying that. Now,
totally.
let me explain what you said, which was different. You said that if you get a PhD and it has the level of curiosity that you're going to explore a topic in enough detail that you have expertise on that topic, that is your PhD in the School of Hard Knocks. And then when you start deploying that with clients and learning and figuring out what's the difference between theoretical and practical, that's when you really are adding value. And that's what I loved about your answer was it's not just the letters that go in front of your name or behind your name. It's the time, the curiosity, the focus to really learn and explore and be curious and to continue to learn and be coachable no matter where you are in your level of expertise.
And people say, I haven't been to university, but I've been to the School of Hard Knocks. And, it's kind of a bit of a tongue-in-cheek. It's a bit of a stab in the gut as well. And listening to you and me speak, I think the answer is I've been to the School of Due Diligence. I've done the time to really understand this stuff. I'm not just wandering off the street and having this opinion. I've looked under the bonnet. And if that's a PhD, congratulations. If it's a book, hope you sell 1 million copies. If it's a program, I hope you fill up seats. But whatever it is, show up with your credibility of thorough curiosity.
Oh, that was so amazingly beautiful. So what makes you credible? What makes somebody want to use you as a coach versus somebody else? It's listening to a conversation like this, right? It's, do you relate to what JJ says, or if you think about him as a coach, Dr. Justin James Kennedy, right? Do you like his thinking process? Do you like his philosophy? If he focused that core energy on you within the methodology to help you with coaching, do you feel like that would be valuable? And, the answer to me is yes, right? To me, that's what credibility is. JJ, is if people wanted to reach out to you, what is the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn's pretty easy. You can go to professorkennedy.com. I found the website many years ago, so that was a lucky kind of find. They can email me, jj@profkennedy. Website's probably the easiest, or LinkedIn. I know that's pretty big, but if you just Google me, you'll find me anywhere as well. You can find my book on Amazon as well, and you can find me through my work. I wrote a book called Brain Reboot a couple of years ago, which looked at the journey that I went through and how it's helped people. So, and that's a way to start. It doesn't really matter anyway. I don't know. So you can meet me like that. I suppose the question is, why do you want to meet me? And how is great, but why is even better. So, why would someone want to meet me on this call? What do you think? As a coach, as a PhD supervisor, as a speaker in the neuroscience of well-being, or just some guy who likes to have intelligent conversations like we're having?
Yes, yes, and yes, and yes. I think so. It's a great question. I find it a natural, good closing question. And when I think about this conversation, I think about the aspects, the core values of credibility that you just continually espouse, right? And you can say one or two things which are concocted approaches to life, but it's when you ask and engage in a conversation like this, and you have a series of good feedback and questions, people are going to see you, and there may be, for all four reasons you mentioned, and maybe others, that they see you and they find you fascinating. They're like, oh, let's continue the conversation. And I'm actually looking forward to stopping this because I've got a couple of questions on you that are not for the podcast. So I'm gonna close this, and then I'm looking forward to a couple of minutes because I've got a couple burning questions that I had since our last conversation. So I just want to say thank you so much.
It's so much fun seeing you again. I'm going to be doing a podcast channel as well, so I'll invite you if you got the time to chat with me as well, Mitchell.
Oh, I will always make the time to chat with you, JJ. Thank you so
You're
much.
the
And
best. Thank you so much for the fun.
you're welcome. Listen, and if you're still here, this is now time to click on the like button, spread some cred dust, click on the like button, share with your friends, and we'll see you at the next episode. Take care.